Terminal 8 renovation project is just that. It's a renovation of an existing terminal. This terminal was originally built in 1998, so it's over 20 years old. And these renovation projects are notoriously challenging. We have to make the new fit the old. We are constantly discovering items in walls or unforeseen conditions that we didn't know were there. And so that's been a challenge for the project. But the contractors have done a great job of overcoming them. And let me also mention the designers. We have a team of designers on this project that have really guided the design well over the past several months. We started this project in early 2020, and the contractor has made substantial progress. What you see behind me is a new POV drop-off lane, and the canopy is being built to match the existing drop-off canopy that was built over a decade ago. So it's this interesting mix of making the new match the old, and the contractor really is doing a fantastic job. Early on in the project, we did have to make some changes to the overall program. We put our heads together internally with our finance team. We also reached out to Disney Cruise Line. The project started with a $47 million budget. We had to find a way to carve out in the interim and defer approximately $11 million worth of work. So we currently sit at about a $36 million budget. That $11 million worth of work that we deferred could be brought back at some point in the future. The components that we deferred were an exterior luggage screening hall, some expansion to the interior concierge area, that's the VIP area, and also some renovation work at Cruise Terminal 10 was deferred as well. What we're standing in front of right here is an 11,000 square foot expanded arrivals hall for Disney Cruise Line's Terminal 8. We have built the new to match the existing vernacular. You can see the twisted rope trim across the top. The tall rotunda in the background is part of the existing structure from 1998, along with the functioning clock. And we're surrounded by this grand new plaza with landscaping, planter bed, new palm trees, areas for guests to gather prior to entering the terminal. New carpeted floors, charging stations for modern devices. The existing ticket counters used to come all the way to this end. We cut the existing ticket counters back to make more room for seating. And we've spent to date probably $165,000 renovating the floor. That existing terrazzo floor that was put down in 1998. A lot of time and effort's gone into polishing it, repairing it, cracks, repairing inlays. We're on the pier out here at Cruise Terminal 8, and part of this expansion project includes marine work renovation as well. I want to point out a couple of different things out here on the dock. One is the location of the new passenger boarding bridge. So if you pan around, over by that white truck, you'll see the foundation, and also above it, you'll see the building penetration where that new passenger boarding bridge is going to hook up. It will come over from a Delta in Barcelona, Spain later this year, early December, nearly fully assembled. They'll set it in place, do the final connection, do the commissioning late this year, early next year. Both the gangways will be able to operate at the same time. Then ultimately that existing gangway will be demolished.
Let's talk about Cruise a little bit more now. I talked about the no sale order from the CDC. It expired on October 30th and was replaced with what they call the conditional sale order, effective October 30th, 2020 to November 1st, 2021, a full year of this new order. Certain provisions of the no sale order will remain in place, such as certification process for individual ships. Each one is color-coded. Any COVID or influenza-like illnesses are on board in a certain period of time. It goes from green to yellow to red. A red ship can't come into a U.S. port by CDC orders. Yellow has a wait time before they can come in. When it's green, then it's allowed to arrive and depart. That's not changing. That stays in place. I will say that all of the ships that we've had calling Port Canaveral in the past few years, not all of them have been cleared and are in this certified process. So in order to come back to Port Canaveral, some of them will have to go through this process. There's also total restrictions on crew movements. The crews are not allowed off the ship once they're on board. So there is a challenge for the cruise lines because, people now are going to get on a ship. They know they're going to be on it. If they're on for a 9-month contract, they're 9 months on that ship. So there's some new challenges that we didn't have to deal with in the past. Just to give you a little sidebar on some of our tenants that are really feeling the pain with the cruise industry being down, we've got Crew Express on the north side of the port, which caters to all of the crew members, and they have their mail delivered there. It's a place people can get off, grab a sandwich, whatever, and congregate. And their business, of course, without the cruise ships, is down to zero. When the cruise ships come back, all outward appearances are now, it will stay at zero until November, or maybe even longer than that. If the crew members can't get off the ships and they're not allowed on the ships, that really destroys their business model. American Cruise Aid Logistics, right behind this building, is another great port partner of ours, delivers supplies to the ships. Well, if the ships aren't moving, they're not delivering many supplies. So they've had a particular hard time as well. And the one that I'm going to highlight, because I think it's important, and two of their members are in the room here, the Canaveral Pilots. There's 9 pilots in Port Canaveral, and with the number of ships calling right now, I'll let them speak for themselves, but 9 is a tough number for them. And if you look to the future, when these cruise ships come back, you need 9 pilots. So how do you get from A to B when we get started again? And that's a challenge. And some of our tenants, as I say, are feeling a lot more pain than others. And the pilots is not a tenant. Well, they are. They rent a berth, but beyond that, they are really feeling the pain. I just wanted to highlight that. Another aspect of when cruising gets restarted, it's zero COVID tolerance on board the ship. So the CDC protocols are going to be very, very rigid on what happens if there is a case on board, and that goes back into that color-coded scheme. The other part about setting the course for the future with the conditional phases, the initial one is going to be shipboard testing process. All ships will have testing facilities on board. There will be, we've learned a lot about this as we go along, but they will be required to do PCR testing. Passengers will be tested before they get on the ship. They'll be tested when they get off the ship. Crew members will be tested before they get on. Sometimes in some phases, there's multiple testing before people can get on the ship. It's going to be very, very strict. It's going to be tightly managed. There's going to be plans that have to be designed right now on social distancing on the ships, use of masks. How the cruise lines are going to operate is very, very dependent on how well they conform to the CDC technical guidelines that are being written and issued as we speak. There'll also be simulated cruising before there are any revenue guests on the ships. Every cruise line is going to have to have a simulated cruise. They'll be accepting volunteers at some point, might be friends and family, whatever. They cannot accept revenue on these voyages, totally voluntary. And the way that guidelines is going to be one or more that they will have to complete in order to resume passenger operations. It's going to be a very slow build-up. Like I said, 100% testing, passenger and crew, fewer guests, talking about 50% capacity limitations when they first start. Shorter cruises, there will be no cruise longer than 7 days, at least through November of next year. So that changes some of the cruise line itineraries as we've known them. The changes, as I mentioned, the policy changes are in development. The approvals for everything I just mentioned will come on a ship-by-ship basis, not fleet-wide. So if Royal Caribbean gets one of their ships cleared, that's great. That doesn't apply to any other ship in their fleet. So every single ship has to go through the simulated voyages and all the testing criteria, testing on board. It all starts with the crew. The crew will be tested. There's a timeline for that. Then it'll evolve to the simulated voyages, timeline for that. Then it'll evolve to the guest services. Sequential phased processes. The requirements for prearranged agreements with ports on medical providers and others. The cruise lines will all have to have, not public, but private ambulance services, medical facilities, even places to bring any crew members that might be sick or passenger guests off the ship, have a place that they can go that will not overwhelm the medical facilities within any particular community. That's a tricky thing to figure out because in the ports we have to be involved in how many ships can safely be in Port Canaveral at any point in time. And there's some pretty complicated formulas you have to think about on that, because if you got a 3,000 passenger ship, that's not 3,000 passenger potential going to a hospital. There's asymptomatic, there's people that aren't sick, and then there's going to be a certain percentage, when you drill down far enough, that might need shoreside medical care. And that's not something we as a Port Authority are going to calculate, nor are the cruise lines. This has got to come from the science that the CDC has, and what are those numbers, and they need to be realistic, otherwise we'll never get cruising started again. But I think everybody right now is pulling in the right direction. We've had discussions ourselves with CDC, and I know the cruise lines now are all having very active discussions. So I think we are moving in the right direction. There'll be protocols for crew movements, passenger movements, outbreak prevention, and management. A lot of work to do, but we're finally talking and moving in a direction which is positive. The technical requirements are still in development. Once again, onboard testing, all crew and passengers. When I say onboard testing, testing facilities on board, they don't have to send anything ashore. So first off, that's a challenge for the cruise lines. They have to have an FDA approved test, and they have to have the approved FDA equipment on board. So sourcing that for every ship is one of their current challenges. The cruise lines will be responsible for virus identification, containment, and management will be robust. And the standards and technical requirements are ongoing. The CDC is issuing them, and through the dialogue, they'll be changing them as we go along. So that conversation is being held, and that's good. Outbreak management plans must involve, as I stated, local and state departments of health. Something different from past operations.